Welcome to the second half of our 1.1 notes today. As you can see, our learning goals today we're going to identify and name arrays and segments. We'll also be able to use symbolic notation to describe arrays and segments. You must be able to take a picture and identify array or segment, or you're going to be given symbolic notation of array or segment and must be able to draw a picture. Again, these arrays and segments definitions are the foundations of geometry, along with what we did yesterday in our points, lines, and planes. Let's go ahead and do our first definition. We have an array. Array is a part of a line that begins with a single point and extends infinitely in one direction. Think about a line. Line is what we learned yesterday. A line extends in both directions. Array only extends in one direction. It takes 2 points to name array. Here is your symbolic notation right over here. Notice it has only one arrow on the symbol, not two. Our line again had two. Our array only has one. Anytime you write the symbolic notation, you always write it from left to right. The arrow will always point to the right when you are writing out the name of the array. Let's look at some examples here. Notice we start at S. That is referred to as our endpoint of a array. That's where that's where the array always starts, and it's always the first point when we name array. So we start at S, we go through T with that arrow on the end. It extends forever. So we would name with our endpoint first, S, T with the array symbol on top. So this is array ST. Again, that endpoint must be first. Common mistake kids make is when we go through more than 2 points, as you see here. We have A, B, and C that are collinear. There's a vocab word you should know. Co, meaning coming together, two or more. Linear, meaning straight line. A, B, and C are collinear. They are in a straight line. We are starting at A, that is our endpoint, going through B, going through C, and extending forever. So we have two different ways we can name this array. Again, we must start with our endpoint. So my first name, I'm going to have A first, and it goes through B. So I would call this array AB. Again, here's our symbolic notation moving from left to right of a array, array AB. A being our endpoint. The second way you can name it is array starting at our endpoint A and going through C, array AC. You could have either one of these answers. Both of them are correct. Your neighbor might have one, you might have the other. That doesn't mean anybody's wrong. You're actually both right. Our last way, which was on the FSA last year, and a common mistake most kids make. Notice our array is moving from right to left. Our endpoint is where we start, and we go infinite direction to the left here. So we're starting at Y. Y is our endpoint, so it goes first. We go through X, infinity, because of the line or the arrow there. So this would be array YX. Notice, even though the array is moving to the left, I still write it in symbolic notation with the array moving to the right, because again, we read from left to right. Next, we have a line segment. A line segment is a part of the line that has two endpoints and all the points between them. Okay, so a line segment has a start point and a stop point. Notice here's our first example of a line segment. It starts at G, it goes to H's, and it stops. There's no arrows on the end of this segment. That's why we're calling it a segment. It's part of a line. We always name a line segment with two endpoints, where it starts and where it stops. It does not matter which one you use first or second. Here is your symbolic notation of a line segment right up here. Notice it's a segment of a line. No arrows on it because the segment starts and stops. It does not extend forever. So I can name this line segment GH, because the endpoint G and the endpoint H, or you can name it HG. Either one is correct. Now you may get this from time to time. Notice we have a little m, lowercase, compared to our uppercase points. This lowercase m means measure. So we are going to measure segment GH. And we'll have to do that when we start working with constructions or when we're trying to find segment lengths. And they'll also incorporate some algebra, but we'll get that to a later section. So again, anytime you see a little m in front of a segment or an angle, they are asking you to measure it. You'll never see it in front of a line symbol or array symbol because those things extend forever. Segments start and stop. Measure of segment GH. Our last one, you will be using this throughout the whole year. Congruent. Congruent means to have the same measurement, length, or identical in form. You must know the congruency symbol. This right here is a congruency symbol, a squiggly line with an equal sign underneath it. This means congruent. Anytime we are referring to geometric shapes being the exact same measurement or size, we use the congruent symbol. If we actually talk about their measurements, like this is 5 inches and that's 5 inches, we would just use an equal sign. So looking at this, the measure of segment AB is 3 inches. The measure of segment YZ is 3 inches. Therefore, I can conclude that segment AB is congruent to segment YZ. Their measurements are equal in length, therefore the two segments themselves are congruent. Segment AB congruent to segment YZ. Important that you know your symbolic notation and be able to name these things and verbalize them. You're going to have to be able to show congruency from pictures. They're going to use what the book refers to as markers. Old books used to call them tick marks. Whatever you want to call them is up to you. As you see in here in red on this rectangle, this right here has one marker or one tick mark. This side over here has one tick mark or one marker. Since they both have one marker, they are congruent in their lengths. Look up top, we have PQ and RS. Since both of those have two markers, they are congruent in length. You must have the same number of markers. I've showed my congruency statement over here. All right, so a couple things you're going to need to know now that our lesson's done. And the first thing that we need to know from today's lesson is how to name and draw line segments and rays. Second thing you should have learned is how to use your symbolic notation for line segments and rays. And the third thing you should know how to do is identify congruent parts and write symbolic statements. This concludes our lesson for 1.1. Again, make sure you have the notes copied down in your own handwriting, and they will be due first thing tomorrow in class.